your assessment of how things went, how do you think the media did in encountering the president?
Well, let me indicate that it's not the first time that we've had such an event. So we have the experience of previous encounters. So we try to improve the experience as much as possible. The invitations were sent to the media organizations. I heard some claim that we had restricted attendance. No, we hadn't. What we did was that we sent invitations to media houses so that they then selected who represented them. Of course, depending on the size of the media house, a certain number of invitations were sent out, which is natural. And I don't think that there's much difficulty with that. The attendance was impressive. I think we had close to 100 media personnel attending. Both local and foreign media were present. Except that we had 1.5 hours within which to cram the whole program. The president made an opening statement which lasted between 15 to 20 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. And then
it was more than 20 minutes.
Okay, well,
yeah,
25, 30 minutes, that's fine. It was necessary because then it was not everything that was going to come out through the Q&A session. And he also needed to report on his stewardship. In fact, it is that report that would then form the basis for further questioning. So that was necessary. Through that, a lot of information was put out. The question and answer session also went well. I did my best to moderate it. Let me indicate that there was no prior arrangement to call any particular media house or any particular media person. The way the seating arrangements were, there was a section in the middle that had a large number of media personnel, and then there was a section on the left that had a smaller number, and then the one on the right basically had government officials, so they were out of the loop. So as much as possible, I tried to offer opportunity for as many journalists as possible to ask questions. I think we had between 20 and 25 questions, if I'm not mistaken. The initial plan was to have 5 rounds of 4 questions each, but we did, I think, 4, and there was an average of 5-6 questions each. So we are talking in excess of 20 questions. But the questions centered on the most important subjects. The quality was high. One of the things that I try to do is to limit lengthy preambles because it tends to take a lot of time. But the preamble is necessary in order to lay the foundation for the question. So I thought that the quality was okay. The subjects covered a broad range of issues that reflected public sentiment. Of course, we have always been confident in the president's ability to field questions. The reason is that, and working closely with him, he is not one who sleeps on the job in terms of his briefs. He takes his briefs very seriously, and he is constantly on the beat to learn what is happening. He does not micromanage sectors or ministries, but he keeps an eye on everything that is, and that is why you find that on every subject that you throw at him, he is able to offer substantive answers, and it is one of the things that endears him to many people. The responses were good. Of course, people will have their views, and again, as you indicated, because of the time, it was not going to be possible to cover every detail that needed to be covered. But events like this one or engagements like this one offer opportunity for us to shed light on some of the other areas. So if I were to sum up, I would say that it was a successful event. It will not be a one-off. It will be done regularly. At least every year that he is president, he is going to try to engage the media. And when there are exceptional occasions that require for some urgent interaction, he will do that. Mind you, it is not only the president that will be out and about speaking to government activity. We have the government accountability series. The object is to open our government on a day-to-day basis. At the moment, we do it 3 times a week. So Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. We started about 2 months ago. It was interrupted rudely by this tragic helicopter crash where your friend Dr. Manibu and others regrettably perished. Today, for instance, the foreign minister is on the beat. He will be there to answer important questions relating to Ghana's standing in the international community. On Wednesday, we are likely to have the transport minister also. So these are ways that we try to meet media expectations, because I know that there are burning issues that on a daily basis agitate your mind and you need answers to them. So we are more than happy to engage, open up government and allow citizens through viewing the media, of course, to let us know what they feel about how we are governing and what we can do to improve the whole arrangement. Yeah.
All right, let's try and touch on some of the issues that have sparked conversation since the encounter. Galamsey, I think, has become the one big one. There are many facets to the conversations that are coming out of it. The first one, of course, is around the state of emergency. The president's response to the question about that was quite straightforward. He said that, look, there are many other things that can be done. before a state of emergency becomes necessary. He considers it the last resort.
Sure.
There are many groups, including the Coalition Against Galamsey, who say, now, last resort, and are we not there? If we've got the Ghana Water Company shutting down treatment plants, so there are people whose taps haven't seen water in months because of Galamsey. If we've got people reporting all kinds of conditions in our health facilities because of Galamsey. If you've got forest reserves, our lands minister reporting to us that forest reserves have been taken over by bandits. We've got over 200 excavators coming in a day. What power would constitute state of emergency beyond these?
Well, I think that, let me indicate that government appreciates the genuine concern surrounding the issue of Galamsey. Because of the threat that it poses, it has naturally become an emotive subject. People are deeply concerned about it and they want urgent action. Government understands that fully, and such urgent action is underway. Let me indicate that on the matter of state of emergency, you are right. The president said that there are conventional approaches that are currently being deployed that he believes would help us achieve the objective of wiping out this canker once and for all, and that when it becomes necessary, a state of emergency may be declared. The reason being that a state of emergency is a pretty severe measure. I'm sure you are fully aware. It essentially means that you set aside laws as they are and adopt extraordinary, sometimes very harsh, very drastic measures in order to beat back a particular problem. It comes with its own difficulties, and therefore the declaration of same must be based on tangible reasoning. You must have sufficient basis to do that, so that you are very clear that the consequences that will result will be worth the effort. And as president, you do know that he has to take that decision on the basis of information available to him and what he perceives to be the capabilities of the assets that he has deployed to fight this canker. He believes earnestly that currently some gains are being made that could be sustained, and as and when we get to a stage where it is absolutely necessary to deploy those measures, that will create some discomfort for ordinary citizens and may involve measures that may not necessarily be in tandem with the way that our laws should function and all that. He will take the decision as later. So let me say that he has not ruled out a state of emergency. He just believes that we need to give ourselves a bit more time in order to be able to get there. But that said, since he became president, he has done everything that has to be done in order to ensure that we beat back on Galamsey. Now what? Yes. Oh, absolutely. Now I'll go through a lot. First of all, what is the issue? We have a situation where the allure of gold has drawn thousands of Ghanaian youth into illegal mining. Let me indicate that illegal mining has existed for some time. It's been there for quite some time. In the past, it used to be artisanal. So they get a whole spade or something, they go dig the earth, and whatever little they can get, they go and sell in order to make ends meet. You can say that they were driven into that because of economic difficulties, the lack of job opportunities, and all of that. Then over time, people with much more resources found that it was a potentially lucrative venture, and so invested and employed these young people who were engaged in artisanal illegal mining to do their bidding. Then over time, heavy equipment got involved, so you found that the rates at which the environment was destroyed escalated very quickly. It was important to then intervene in a way that stopped this practice. But you see, it's also an insidious problem. Now, even as you try to address a problem, those engaged in it find ways to outwit you. So it is an effort that must go on constantly. The previous government came under fierce criticism, and I did not mince any words. I see that you play a certain video of mine. I did not mince any words. Look, they deserved every condemnation that they got, because at a point it became obvious that there was governmental complicity. There were big people within the New Patriotic Party who were engaging in this. In fact, the point man that the president himself appointed, Professor Frimpong Boateng, produced a report which you discussed on this program extensively in the past. In fact, he is on tape, and he is heard saying clearly that Galamsey had become a major source of funding for the New Patriotic Party. So it was obvious that the government of the day was unwilling, or at least was not as motivated enough to address the problem in the comprehensive manner that it should. So they came under natural condemnation, and I took part. I do not regret that one bit, because they deserved that condemnation. in power. I work with President Mahama, so I know that he does not have any interest in mining, whether legal or illegal. In fact, he has told all of us who are his appointees that we are not even permitted to go into legal or lawful mining, let alone illegal one. That the day he hears that any of us has an interest in any form of mining, he is going to dismiss us summarily that very day. So he has made it very clear. On top of that, he, through the Lands Ministry, the Defense Ministry, the Interior Ministry, and other stakeholders, set up a system to beat back on galamsey. Initially, there were various teams. The IGP had one. There was one that was led by the military and others, who moved into areas that had been overtaken by galamsey. Indeed, the assessment shows that there are 288 forest reserves in Ghana. When we came to power, 44 of them had been threatened by galamsey, but at least 9 of them had been completely taken over by armed gangs who were carrying on this illegal activity. So the immediate course of action was to take back those 9 that had been taken over by these armed gangs and ensure that the 44 that were threatened were protected. As I speak to you, the 9 forest reserves that were taken over by armed gangs have been repossessed by government. But what happens is that the moment you repossess them and you think that things are okay and you leave, the people come back. So the plan now is to ensure that there is permanent presence in the most threatened forest reserves and the riverine areas. So that has been done. In addition to this, the main implement that is used are excavators. Excavators are actually construction equipment, earth moving equipment. So they are not designed to be used illegally. But of course, some of those who engage in galamsey have found ways to use it. So it was important to ensure that those equipments are taken away from those who use it. So as I speak to you, in the last 7-8 months, 440 of these excavators have been seized, some of which have been destroyed.
That's just about 2 days of import.
No problem. Again, 1,400 arrests have been made in the last 6 months. Indeed, when we did a review, we found that in the last 2 years preceding the exit of the Akufo-Addo administration, about 800 people were arrested. In the last 8 months alone, 1,400. And indeed, I engaged the Attorney General last year. He says that special courts are going to be set up to hasten the trial of these people to ensure that it serves as a deterrent. Kojo, when you go to the river bodies, what creates that difficulty with turbidity? You know that I'm a chemist by training, so I know a bit about turbidity and water quality. The water quality now is way beyond the threshold that we should have. It is not acceptable at all.
Much worse than it was when
much
you
worse,
became
much worse.
Government.
But the thing is that the equipment that they use to do that is the shamfan, which is some contraption that is retrofitted to stir the riverbed in order to push gold up. 300 of those have been seized and destroyed. In fact, you won't find them anywhere because they've actually been destroyed. In addition to this, 900 water pumps have been seized. And in fact, I think, was it on Thursday or Friday, the Agric Minister handed this over to farmers to use to water their farms. Some have questioned the morality of it, but it shows that we are dispossessing those who have access to these equipment of them, so that we can put it to other use. Now, this has been done with a view to ensuring that we curb the incidence of galamsey. In addition to this, we have what we call the blue water guards. Of course, they are not armed to confront galamseyers. In other words, they are not going to shoot their way into galamsey areas and repossess them. But they serve as the eyes and ears of government and those who are involved in flashing out these people. So what they do is to police the riverine areas. And these are people located in areas where there are rivers. 980 of them have been trained as we speak. By the end of the year, we expect another 1,020, making 2,000 will be trained. So they keep an eye.
What skills were they trained in?
Oh, basically surveillance, to monitor and see who is doing what. Once they do that, they relay information to those who have the means to use force to flash out these people.
Between the police, the military, the Ministry of Lands, which institution is empowered to use force to fix?
The police and the military.
The police and the military,
obviously.
So if we have this, I asked you earlier whether you are sure, because you said that the president has used every opportunity and every resource to ensure we fight this. But if you go to the Ghana Navy, for example, you have the Ghana Navy Riverine Command. And the job of that unit is to police our water bodies, to ensure safety, to ensure they are not being polluted and everything. I'll be interested to know the kind of resources we've given to such a unit, which is part of our security structure, to help us deal with galamsey instead of training blue water guards.
Sure, they do their part, but you know the constraints that they face. But I don't need to get into it now. If you have access to the reports, the state of equipment and all that, you know that there's a major challenge. Their ability to patrol all our waters is significantly challenged. Even if they were operating at full throttle, there's nothing wrong with additional hands to help tackle a problem that is creating the difficulties that all of us are seeing. So that in itself is not a problem at all. The point is that you need people who maintain vigilance and are able to spot these activities for rapid response.
So the blue water guards are basically spies.
Well, you can call them that, but they do a bit more than that. You understand?
But
through their efforts,
we've seen something similar to the blue water guards. In fact, in the previous administration, there were about different names for fighting galamsey. Galam stop, galam this, galam
but
this.
there were no blue water guards. There were no blue water
It was
guards.
not successful.
Yeah, so they called their operations by certain names. I'm talking about a specific group of people dedicated to monitoring the river bodies to ensure that we pick up early signals of such activity for responses. I don't think there's any difficulty with it. But if you allow me to go through the number of things that are being done. Now, in addition to the river guards, so now there's going to be an effort to dechemicalize the river bodies that have been so polluted in order to restore them to their original state. Now, there's talk about the influx of excavators. I could you mention that on a daily basis we have about 200. Of course, clearly it is not normal importation for construction. In the past, there was unbridled importation. There was no effort to check the influx. But it has become apparent that these excavators have been imported for suspicious purposes. I wouldn't say illegal purposes, because then you need to have the evidence. So what do? You need to be able to monitor the use of these excavators. In fact, ideally, before an excavator is imported, you need to be able to ascertain its use. But the first step is to impound those that have come in. So in the last 2 months alone, 1,300 excavators have been impounded at the port. The object is to ensure that those who have imported them bring proof of the use of these excavators other than illegal mining. Construction companies are allowed to bring in excavators. Mining firms are allowed to bring in excavators, and there's no difficulty with it. But if we get the slightest hint that it's going to be used for a purpose other than these two, or that is going to go into illegal mining or any other criminal activity, then it will be impounded and it will not be released. So that has been done. That's why it created a bit of a backlog at the port. Last week, my journal reported that they are being cleared in the dead of night. That is not the case. In fact, on 22nd August 2025, GPHA issued a statement that there had been a bit of congestion because of the seizure or the impounding of these excavators, and that they were going to engage in an exercise to evacuate them to military spaces for safekeeping. And in fact, if you went by Burma Camp today, you will see some of them packed at Burma Camp. Others are at Michelle Camp and what have you. In fact, tomorrow, the transport minister will lead a team of media people to inspect this. The object of this is to ensure that we put to rest any doubt about the whereabouts of these excavators. So that story was misleading. It was not accurate. And I thought that a cursory check with GPHA or other authorities would have revealed it. So that must be placed on record. Now, what has happened is this. The excavators at the ports are now being tracked. So tracking devices are being installed. It's a prerequisite for clearing them. Now, once it is tracked, you are able to monitor wherever that excavator goes. There's also what they call geofencing, which means that it is designed such that you cannot go outside of the area that you say this equipment is going to be deployed, because it can be disabled from source and you will not be able to move it. That didn't exist in the past, and so it made it possible for people to move excavators and use them for purposes other than what had been indicated. Now, there's an extra 600 of these excavators that are yet to be looked into. In fact, we are moving to an era where before you import it, you must receive a permit, and that permitting process will require you to bring sufficient proof of the use of that excavator before you are even allowed to put it on the ship and bring it to Ghana. So all this is being done to ensure that we're able to track what is happening. Then there was the issue of the LI 24.
I would like us to come. I would like us to come back and deal with the LI, because you've given us quite a list of actions that have been taken so far by this administration against galamsey. So the levels have gone up. They are worse. there are actually parts of the Ankubra that have been blocked by galamseyers. That was not even the case last year. So then, of course, we have the excavator imports, which has skyrocketed to over 200 a day. And then we have the issue with our forest reserves. You talked about 9 of them being taken over completely by bandits and then reclaimed. And then, of course, they keep finding their ways back in there. So there is just an overwhelming buffet of evidence that the actual numbers tell us that the galamsey effects are worsening, not getting better.
And Kojo, you know why I asked that question, whether he's sure? Because Winston and I, yesterday, just about a 5-minute drive from a police checkpoint where the police interacted with us, we just see people mining by the roadside on the Axim Road. So my point is, if we put everything in place to check galamsey, right, then even these police officers should be taking some action, or somebody should be working. And the other reason why, Minister, I think that the government, the president, has not done everything he has to do to ensure we fight galamsey. I'll go back to the structure.
Sure.
You have the police structure, right? You have the military structure. You also have even the National Signals Bureau. Now, the president said those circulating fake news, we have the National Signals Bureau infrastructure to be able to track them. It's the same infrastructure that you can use to track people all over the country, people who are into galamsey. So we are not seeing an improvement, really. And we travel a lot. We are not seeing an improvement. We see the activities happening. A lot of the reports we see are from the forest areas. But now these days, even by the roadside, you see people doing it.
Well, first of all, let me handle the bit about the disparate efforts by various agencies. That's why we have the NIMOS. Yeah, and the president spoke to it. There was some concern a few weeks ago about the temporary halt in the activities of the police-led task force. The reason was that we were getting reports about some excesses and some work that was being done at cross purposes because the teams were not working together as a unit. So there was a need to bring some coordination in the effort so that you better monitor progress. You're able to deal with excess. Because the last thing you want is for people to go out there and go on a frolic of their own on the back of this operation, because that creates its own difficulties.
What the president said was that they were actually shutting down.
Yes, in fact, we are even getting reports of extortions, and you don't want that. You don't want that. So you need to be able to better track what is up. That's why NIMOS. So NIMOS is the one-stop shop that all matters relating to galamsey is dealt with. They have the capacity, the equipment, the personnel to monitor what is happening. So that halt was very temporary. It was not intended to allow galamseyers free passage. So that must be placed on record. The second point is that, you see, improvement or the lack of it has to be empirical. You see, you have to have hard facts to back it. So could you, if on assumption of power, say in February, there were 9 forest reserves under the total control of armed bandits who were superintending galamsey, and now we've reclaimed that. That is a clear improvement. You cannot say that it has not improved. Turbidity levels are extremely worrying. That is why the river guards have been deployed. That is why there's an effort to decemicalize, to use some technology to reclaim or better improve the quality of the water. The excavator menace, you've raised concern about the excessive importation. That is something government has noticed. So you see that specific action has been put in place to check that. That is why today the excavators in military camps, ordinarily these excavators will find their way into forest reserves or riverbeds for the purposes of galamsey. That is no longer the case as we speak.
On the excavators in military camps last week, I personally went around
and you saw some of them, yes.
And I saw them being moved in. Absolutely. With the guys taking records
and
everything.
It was just to decongest the port because it had taken over too much space and containers were struggling for space. So that was all. So these are empirical facts. Nobody is under
turbidity levels.
Yes, but
because
nobody
we have numbers there. Let's
so the turbidity levels. So the point is, I get, you see, you need to be able to show the physical activity of galamsey taking place at a particular point to be able to move in. So the turbidity levels may be worrying, no doubt about it. And certainly I don't want a situation where very close to the water source that I drink, there's some galamsey taking place. That is being dealt with. The water quality will improve over time. But I'm saying that in terms of those who's
worsening.
No, but those whose activities are leading to these deterioration in turbidity levels are being checked. They are being held in check through the processes and systems that I have outlined. So it will take a bit of time to be able to win the war overall. Nobody is under any delusion. Of course, I've heard people say that, in the past there were some members of the NDC who said, galamsey could be won over in a week or a month or so. The president,
Sam George.
yes, but the president didn't give any such timeline. You see, yes, Sam George is a prominent member of the NDC. He carries weight. What he says goes far, no doubt about it. But I think that, to be fair, if you want to assess a president, you take him by his own words, his own actions, the commitments that he made. President Mahama did not give any timeline to ending galamsey, and he said it at the media encounter. I think as a follow-up to in answer to your question, that he was not under any illusion that overnight, by the way, for Majengo and galamsey will end, because it is an insidious problem. You see, the allure of gold is powerful. Sometimes I have wondered why people would even put themselves in such a situation. The risk that they take, the pace that they go into that collapse and caving. But the allure of making money quickly through gold is powerful. It is one that takes effort to dissuade people from. So, in addition to all these measures to curb galamsey, there's also the Responsible Community Mining Project, which essentially hands over some disused mines by lawful mining companies to the youth so that they can engage in responsible mining that is monitored, that does not affect the environment, and be able to make money decently, as opposed to going into this dangerous work of galamsey. So I think that we all need to establish, we need to be clear that even as we take steps to fight it, those who are engaged in it still find reason to go back. And some time ago I said that the galamsey fight has to be an eternal fight. It was taken out of context to mean that we will never win it, but we have to maintain eternal vigilance. That is why, as part of the efforts going forward, all those places that have been reclaimed, the soldiers and the security forces won't leave. They will set up permanent camps to ensure that people don't come. At least the 44 forest reserves that were endangered, and all the riverine areas of Ghana will have permanent security presence to ensure that people do not come back, and that will be rolled out in the coming days. Actually,
let's talk about the gold board answer. The president said that, in the past, before the gold board, these foreign aggregators were the ones, making the money from all this illegal gold. Today, at least, government is making that money. So it's the lesser of two evils, if you will. There have been reactions to this. Dr. Cadman Mills from the KEEA constituency.
That would be Dr. Cadman Mills is the elder brother of Samia.
Dr. Cadman Mills, forgive me.
Samia Mills is the MP for KEEA.
Forgive my mistake. Dr. Cadman Mills.
He is the twin brother of President Mills.
That's right. Mills, He has said emphatically that he is not willing to trade people's lives for the accolades that the government may get for an improved economy. This is his reaction to what the president had to say.
There are two separate issues. You see, there's no dispute about the fight against galamsey. That exists. The reason for that is that we want to preserve lives. We want to ensure that our lives, our environment is not threatened by the activities of galamsey. Then there's another issue, which is purely economic. Indeed, there was a famous incident involving the late His Excellency Kwakye Mr. Atta. He went to India for a forum. In his speech, and he wanted to highlight the level of trade between Ghana and India, he mentioned that Ghana exports about 1.8 tons or so of gold to India annually. When he finished speaking, the Indian trade minister who was at the forum said, no, the figures they have show that we have in excess of 4 tons of gold traded between Ghana and India annually. So immediately he pointed to a certain shortfall in our own ability to monitor what is leaving our shores. So as part of the gold board arrangements, we are monitoring how much gold leaves our shores. Whilst doing that, it enables us get much needed foreign exchange to bolster our own currency, because the effect of depreciation are harsh and we all feel it. So there's an economic downside to not taking control of gold exports. Now, again, the notion that some gold that government superintends in terms of its exports may come from illegal mining at this stage is conjecture, because we don't really have hardcore evidence to show. So it may be an educated guess, a legitimate concern, nonetheless, that cannot be downplayed.
So the fact is that what you're saying officially is that government doesn't know whether
let me say
or
this way. The point is that as we speak, if you say that galamsey gold is being exported as part of what government is talking about, you need to show hard evidence of it. But even if we take it for granted that if there are increased volumes of gold export, then there must be some galamsey gold going in there. Something must be done about it. In the interim, though, it is in our interest as a country to have a handle on how much gold is leaving our shores, to have access to the foreign exchange that accrues from SIM, because we do know that for a long time, Dubai, India, traders there have profited from our gold. That is one argument. And then, as part of the gold board arrangement itself, there's a mechanism that is being put in place to ensure that gold from dubious sources do not find their way into what is being exported. Indeed, the president mentioned the LBMA certification, which is an industry standard that requires that gold must come from certified, approved sources. So it is in our own interest as a country that the gold we market is seen to be coming from quote-unquote clean sources and not from tainted sources. So the president did not say that it was justifiable to have gold come from illegal sources insofar as it gives us foreign exchange. No, he says that as we speak, we do not have that mechanism fully set up yet. But by all means, we must have a handle on how much gold is leaving. And the results show that it has a positive effect on our economy. Indeed, Kojo, since the beginning of this year till last month, $6 billion has been accrued from gold exports alone. If you compare it to the same period last year, it was just about half.
Tell us about that 6 billion.
Yeah.
Is that all money accrued to the government of Ghana?
What it does is that the foreign exchange comes. So what happens? Gold board buys gold with money from the Bank of Ghana. They give them cedis. So they buy the gold, they export, they get dollars. So they give it to the Bank of Ghana. Goes into three things: to show up our reserves, to help finance our external obligations, and then to release some onto the market for traders and businessmen who require that. That is what has substantially boosted our currency. So now the Bank of Ghana has close to $12 billion in reserves. And a significant part of that has come from gold exports, which is great. There can be no difficulty about that. But it does not mean that we are saying that if galamsey gives us $20 billion annually, it is all well and good. No, that is not what the president said. Indeed, that is why he took his time to go through what is being done to ensure that the purity, or if you like, the source of the gold that we are exporting is legitimate, and that it does not have.
Let me ask you this: what's the current situation? So, if someone comes along to the gold board with gold to sell, is it impossible for the gold board to check that these?
Oh, I think they have. Even PMMC had. They are licensed. The person they come with it will be a licensed buyer of gold, but you may not know where he got the gold from. He will only be brandishing a license so that he is certified to trade in gold. But the systems are being put in place to make sure that you are able to tell where he got the gold from. That didn't exist before we came to power. Or even if it existed, it was highly dysfunctional or not able to cover the areas that it should be covering. But now we are putting that in place to make sure that we determine the source, and that if the source is deemed to be inappropriate or illegal, then it will not be added. Action will be taken against those who are trading that. Now, it takes a bit of time to have that system fully in place. But in between that period, if we are making efforts to have a handle on our own gold and earn legitimate foreign exchange to help bolster our economy, I don't think that there's much difficulty. That's what the president said that day.
But we know that 1 + 1 = 2.
Absolutely.
So if currently we are seeing an increase in our gold revenue through the activity of the gold board, and we are saying that it is a fair assumption that some of this gold is illegal, do you see the clear motivation there to not be as hard on galamsey?
Oh, not at all.
Just so that the economy benefits?
Not at all. You see,
if we are admitting that some of it is galamsey gold.
In addition to large-scale gold production, there's also small-scale mining, which is perfectly legal. Perfectly legal. In the past, it is those in that sector who have not been able to account for gold exports. So they export the gold through their own means, and then they use these middlemen, the Indians, the people from Dubai and what have you. So that is where the gold board is focusing, to ensure that the small-scale miners account for the gold that have been exported. We also have agreements. I think at the last count, there were about 9 major gold producers, large-scale gold producers, who are also surrendering significant portions of the gold they mine to gold board for export. Indeed, the plans are to extend it to add another 9 or so. I'm sure the gold board folks will be able to give you more information on that. So it is not necessarily the case that the increase in volumes has come from illegal mining. There were small scale miners who were not factored in initially. Now we have, because there was no law compelling them to surrender that gold to government. Now there's a law that says that if you don't, government is the only purchaser through the, just like we have for cocoa. So the gold board arrangement is a bit modeled on the cocoa arrangement, even if there are small differences. So that is what it is about, really. Of course, any concern that illegal gold may find its way into the stock is legitimate. It must be looked into, definitely. But I don't think that a conversation that says that this arrangement necessarily motivates people to go into illegal mining is accurate. The crime, there can be no excuse for crime. Indeed, if you said that you were hungry and so you robbed somebody, I don't think that your court will accept that. They will still convict you. You understand me? So we need to be clear on exactly what is happening. The president is by no means encouraging illegal mining in favor of increased gold exports for foreign exchange receipts. That is not what is happening at all.
When will the IGP's men be back on the ground?
Oh, they should indeed. Yesterday, I had a discussion with the lands minister, and he informed me that indeed last week, the IGP and his team had got in touch with NIMOS to regularize their operation. So I'm sure they'll be back in a matter of days.
Yeah. Days?
Yes.
Okay. And this time around,
they'll be tracked, they'll be monitored. And so there are all manner of people who brandish some association with security agencies who extort monies from legitimate practitioners in the gold sector and all that. We want to stop that. There are also people who defraud others, people who arbitrarily seize people's mining concessions and what have you in the name of fighting galamsey and all that. That has to be structured properly, because you see, any disruption to small scale mining, I'm talking lawful small scale mining, also has its own effects on the country. That is what that is about. Also, you also don't want the process of tackling galamsey to be abused. For instance, if there are human rights violations in the process, it has to be tracked. For instance, so if a team goes to a village, accuses them of engaging in illegal mining and guns down everybody, we've had instances where the police have gunned down people who they have accused of being armed robbers, and it has turned out they were not armed robbers. You don't want incidents like that, because that has its own difficulties for our society. So NIMOS exists to coordinate the effort, and coordination will yield much better results. There's no doubt about it. But it also prevents abuse and excesses that are not desirable, and that is what the president wants to see. Yeah.
I wish there was more time so we could get into so many more of these things. But before you leave us, one thing that I would like to hear you touch on is what the president had to say about hate speech. And he talked about plans on to use people's IP addresses to track them down and clamp down on hate speech as is done on social media and so forth. I had a couple of questions coming about that. One person wanted to know, can't we use that same thing to track fraudsters who are doing mobile money fraud?
And it is done. It is done. In fact, one of the things that national security touts a lot when you engage them is that they've been able to bust some of these gangs through such monitoring. So it is something that is there, except that it's not broadcast. It is not. In fact, some of these things you don't even want people to know that you have the capability. It's one of the ways that you are able to take them by surprise and bust whatever operations that they are engaged in. But the bit about hate speech, you know that President Mama is an affable, you know him quite well. Very affable, easygoing person, very tolerant. Indeed, sometimes he is even criticized within the NDC for being too tolerant of critics. You know that Manasseh is a fierce critic of his. Indeed, I can disclose to you, Manasseh has actually met President Mama on a number of occasions since he became president. He's hosted him, had discussions with him. So he's not somebody who is averse to criticism or even harsh criticism. Because it is allowed. We are in a democratic space. You are allowed to take on governments. It may be pleasant. In fact, the guarantees to free speech exist because the framers of the constitution were aware that there were those who will engage in speech that is not pleasant. And those of us in power should not have the ability to go after people because they've said things that we don't like within the confines of the law. But in a situation where somebody says that I'm going to kidnap the president, kill him and behead his wife, clearly that is not free speech. That is a huge threat on the life of an individual. Forget about the fact that he's even president. On an individual, because if somebody threatened you, the person should not get away with it simply because there's free speech. So it is, and there are people who make allegations that border on national security. For instance, they say that this person is brandishing these sophisticated weapons and is going to engage in this sort of crime. Going after such a person to help you establish how he came by that information, exactly what is going to happen, is not in itself wrong. What should not be countenanced is a willful abuse of people's rights, to deny people. For instance, that's why I have been a bit surprised by the ruling of the circuit court judge in the Abronia matter. Abronia is known for his propaganda and all that. I mean, I doubt if there's anybody who takes him seriously in this country. He makes wild claims that are false. I doubt if he will ever host Abronia on this program, because you know that he won't give you any value. But by God, even he has to have his rights defended. So I found it quite bizarre, to be honest, when I read that the judge had said, and I had to read it to believe it, because I couldn't believe it when it was being said, that all men are supposed to be equal before the law, but some are more. I cannot understand that. I cannot understand that. Absolutely,
And you
cannot stand.
You also read
that
in
cannot
that,
stand.
since
Yeah.
we're on it, you also read the judge say that he's also in a quest for consistency, and that in the previous government he held someone
but the consistent wrongdoing
this,
cannot be justified.
he held someone.
So
who
everybody, when you beat me, you slap me. So when you beat me, you must slap me. You know, it is not justifiable. I understand the position of the judge. We are all desirous. We are all desirous of sanitizing the space, ensuring that people do not abuse the frontiers of free speech to foment trouble. For instance, if you have a whole MP go on radio and declare that accounts should attack FS, that clearly is not acceptable. So you cannot say that in the past somebody was denied bail, so a similar thing should be done to somebody. Everybody, including murderers and armed robbers, through Martin Kpebu's interventions at the Supreme Court, it has been declared that everybody deserves bail. So after you hold a person 1 or 2 days and you take him to court, there should be bail. Of course, if the judge had said and left it at that Abronia is a flight risk, because already he is claiming that he wants asylum in some members, so he's a flight risk, that is an acceptable rationale. Even then, it has to be done in a way that does not seek to abuse his right. But to say that he's not equal before the law, no, indeed, everybody is equal, from the president to the cleaner at multimedia. We are all equal before the law. So I think that one is problematic and something needs to be done. I am aware that there are efforts to ensure that is corrected,
Right,
and that it does not become the base upon which he sells, despite whatever he says. That
what are these efforts? Is the executive going to intervene?
Oh, of course, the police is the one doing the prosecution, but you do know that the Attorney General also can at any point intervene and take over the prosecution. So I'm aware that the Attorney General is making efforts to ensure that bail is granted to Abronia, despite the undesirable nature of his commentary over the years. Yeah.
There's so much more we need to talk about.
But I would have loved to go on and on. Unfortunately,
time is not. But I'm hoping
let's see.
Felix,
see
are
if
you coming tomorrow?
Let's speak later in the day and
Because
see if I
we
shall
only
go.
spoke about galamsey.
Yes.
Yeah.
We
haven't
haven't
done
done
oral,
oral,
free
but
speech.
yes.
Sorry,
Yeah.
yes.
We
There's the
haven't done
Chief
oral.
Justice
Yes.
issue. When are we getting a substantive one?
Okay.
Are you going to remove the EC chair and all those
No
issues?
problem.
all these things.
No
Yeah,
problem.
we beg you, come back tomorrow and let's continue the
I'll speak to
conversation.
Sammy.
We
Your
appreciate
producer
that.
extraordinaire. You are spared the possibility of coming back to resolve these matters. Yes.
Felix Kwakye Ofosu is the Minister for Government Communication. He's also the Honourable Member of Parliament for Abra Asebu Kwaman Kese.
Absolutely. You are one of the few people who gets the name right all the time.
It's in my